And the movie premieres tonight. How are you going to discuss the premise and sex talk with your kids? Family psychologist Dr. Wes Crenshaw is back with us to discuss it. And I think it's safe to say that this book, or the trilogy of books and the movie, is more of the exception than the rule when it comes to sex and marriages.
Well,
or relationships.
The discussions we could have about marriage nowadays. One of the reasons this becomes so popular in that age group of married women primarily is because it brings up this very exciting alternative to some people's marriages who they feel are not as exciting. But what then happens is teenage girls are very much overlapping in their reading with adult women. This is true. This is why The Hunger Games is popular with adult women. And the same is true with 50 Shades of Grey.
That surprised me. You said you do not know of a teenage girl who has not read these books.
That is right. Last week, 3 alone happened to mention reading this book, probably in anticipation of the movie. But it's been true since the book came out.
All right, so let's get right to it here. So, as a parent, what should we do? Should we take the hard line of saying, limit it and say, nope, you're not going to see this, you're not going to read it, or do we help guide our kids?
Well, as you probably know, the hard line is an excellent way to make certain that your child does exactly what you tell them not to do. And so that usually doesn't work. We go into extensive detail. We have a whole chapter in the book we're working on, Consent-Based Sex Education, about the role of explicit online content, but we also talk about 50 Shades of Grey because it is a written form of erotica that's very popular with teenagers. And that kind of material is America's #1 sex educator these days.
Okay, so as a parent, what is appropriate to discuss with our kids?
You really, I certainly believe filtering and limiting is appropriate, and I even have ways of suggesting how to do that with parents. But you must understand that that is, in the long run, only sending a message. It isn't really interdicting that material. And so parents have to get to be part of that conversation and to really craft a competitive message. And it's okay to go to this movie and say, here's what I don't like about it. A lot of my clients who are more into that sort of sexual involvement don't like the movie or the book because they don't feel it shows clear consent. They don't feel like that's illustrated well enough in the book. And this is something that's a little bit lost on kids, that nuance. They need to learn and think more about consent as the essential element of any sexual relationship, especially if you're going to go outside the bounds in a book like this. Consent's even more important.
Well, we are out of time, and I'm sorry, we could go on for a while longer about this topic, but we appreciate your insight, Dr. Wes.
Just quickly, what happened to the birds and the bees talk, like the good old days?
Yeah, you mean in the 20s? Yeah. Certainly that fundamental is still there, but honestly, kids today, even at 12, 13, and 14, are more informed about mechanics of sex. What they need from parents is the ethical reasoning and the way to think about sexuality and to really consider it from a consent-based standpoint. What am I choosing to do? What do I mean to do? And we're not doing a very great job of that part as parents.
Thank you so much, Dr. Crenshaw. All right, Matt, we'll send it out to you.